Tonight on Metro Focus, an exclusive sit-down with new City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. From his humble roots in the Boston suburbs to his very public coming out at age 18, his fight for sobriety and against his HIV status. But more important, his new role and how he got there. His call for a return to civility in politics, public discourse, and the need to compromise across party lines. Plus, what does the council speaker actually do? He'll take us behind closed doors. And his relationship with Mayor de Blasio, smooth sailing or are storm clouds ahead? A very special half hour with New York's second most powerful person, City Council Speaker Johnson, starts right now.
This is Metro Focus with Rafael P. Roman, Jack Ford, and Jenna Flanagan. Funding for this program was provided by corporate funding for Metro Focus was provided by Mutual of America, your retirement company, and by PSE&G, serving customers, strengthening the business community, and investing in the future.
Good evening and welcome to the special edition of Metro Focus. I'm Jack Ford. Tonight, we speak to the Speaker, our one-on-one with the new New York City Council Speaker, Corey Johnson. The Speaker, often described as the second most powerful elected official in the city, is here with an honest assessment of how he's acclimating to his new role and his relationship with Mayor de Blasio. He's also here to give us a fuller picture of who he is, how he got to where he is, what drives him as a public servant. He first made national headlines back in the year 2000 after he came out as a gay man to his high school football team, of which he was the co-captain. Story made the front page of the New York Times. He was just 18 at the time. He then moved to New York City just a year later and immediately threw himself into LGBT activism, combining his love of sports to help, among other things, start the Gay and Lesbian Flag Football League of New York, and eventually entering public service as a member of Manhattan Community Board 4. What followed was a steady rise in city politics, culminating in his new role as council speaker, a role that did not come without some controversy, as some city leaders were very vocal in wanting a person of color to fill that role. On a personal level, Speaker Johnson has revealed that he has suffered with both addiction and is HIV positive, in hopes of lessening the stigma that often comes with both. So, here with insight to all of the above and a bit more is New York City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. Nice to have you here with us. It's always good to see you.
Thank you, Jake. That was a very kind introduction.
Well,
I wish everyone was that nice.
Oh, I'm an independent, and I'm here to have interesting conversations with interesting people. So that's why we have you here. I want to start off with focusing a little bit on your background and your history. As you know, we are all formed by our experiences. And I want to talk about those experiences and how they have both formed you and informed your politics over the years. And the one thing I mentioned, and this is often mentioned about you in any bios, is this notion of you having the courage as a high school football player, co-captain of your team, to come forward and announce to your team that you were gay. Now, I played high school football, I played college football. I find football to have magnificent transformative values for young men. But we also know that a football locker room is not always the most embracing place for people who are perceived to be different. With that setting the stage then, how and why did you decide that this was the time now, as a co-captain of the football team, and in high school football, that's a big deal for your teammates to vote you co-captain. How and why did you decide now is the time for you to come and tell people who you really were?
Well, first of all, it's I guess it's good to talk about this because I haven't really talked about it in a very long time, and I actually think it does inform why I got involved politically. That experience of being in high school and coming out, I think, is really what set the stage and opened the door for my wanting to be an activist and be politically engaged and civically involved. So for me, I grew up in a little tiny town about 25 miles north of Boston. My mom was my lunch lady at school and cleaned houses on the weekends. My father was a Pepsi truck driver. He was a good man, but he also struggled with alcoholism and gambling addiction. And my real refuge, in many ways, the thing I really excelled at was sports. And my parents were very supportive of me playing sports. And so when I started playing football, I was a pretty good football player. The end of my junior football season, I was elected captain of the football team for the following year. And during my sophomore and junior years, I was struggling immensely with my identity and my sexual orientation. I was despondent, I was clinically depressed, and I was suicidal. And I came out to a couple of teachers.
Was that apparent to anybody? Because here you are, most people would say, look, you're the co-captain of the football team, a really good football team in a town where football meant something.
Yes.
And they probably said, this guy was living the great life here. Could anybody see what you were suffering from?
I think in hindsight, when I came out to my parents, they were able to put the pieces together and realize that I had not been myself. I had kind of holed up in my room a little bit after school. I found it hard to get out of bed in the mornings, to get up and go to school, and my grades suffered, and they couldn't figure out why. But my story of coming out to my teachers and then my parents, who were unconditionally loving, and then to my football team, and I won't give you the whole long story, but part of it is that the day that I decided I was going to come out, I walked into school that morning, and over the intercom system for the entire school, the principal comes on and says, all football players, please report to the coach's office during second period. In my 3 years on the varsity football team, that had never happened before. There had never been an announcement like that.
Right. And you're walking in, having made this decision.
And all the players, because I'm captain, are saying to me, what's the announcement going to be during second period? And I said, don't worry, you'll find out soon.
Yeah.
And so I came out, and within, 5 minutes after I came out, all 1,500 kids at my high school knew that I was gay, and I was the only openly gay student at that time out of 1,500 kids. It was 6 months after Matthew Shepard had been murdered in Wyoming. Marriage equality didn't exist anywhere.
It was a different time.
It was a different
it's not that long ago, but it was an extraordinary long time ago in terms of culture and acceptances here. How did your team react to it, your teammates?
It was in that meeting that I came out to them. I stood up and I said, we've played football together our entire teenage lives. We rely upon each other as friends and as classmates. And I need to tell you something. And what I'm about to tell you doesn't change the person that you knew 5 minutes ago or a year ago or 3 years ago. I want everyone on this team to know that I consider you to be like a family, and I want you to know that I'm gay. And there were kind of crickets. No one really said much. And then the coach asked if anyone had any questions. And after 30 seconds or so, a teammate and a friend of mine raised his hand and said, Corey, you're a great football player. You're a good friend. We just want to play football, and we have your back. And then the room emptied out. I stood there not knowing how it went over, really, in front of 50 guys. And within a few minutes, all 1,500 kids in my high school, again, knew that I was gay. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. But I think there's one important thing to say here, and it's still true today, which is even though it was a different time then, and even though we've made tremendous progress in the almost 20 years since that happened, I was probably afforded some level of privilege inside my school because I was captain of the football team.
Right.
And
because you were one of the guys.
Yes, I was one of the guys.
Not an outsider to start with who had a secret, but was also an other, if you would. You were one of the guys.
And you said it, Jack. You said that, and you know this from your own experience playing football, being on a high school and college football team. In my town, football was the mana. It was the end-all, be-all. It was a big deal. And so for me, I had a level of privilege that other kids in the school probably didn't have. And so, my goal was to, after I came out and had that experience and became a high school student speaking around the state of Massachusetts and eventually speaking around the country, was that every person deserved that experience. Not just captains of football teams.
Do you think we're any closer to that? Do you think if your situation was today, but you weren't the captain of the football team, you were just a guy in school, maybe not in the real social group, but again, sort of on the outside a little bit. Do you think it would be different at all?
It's hard to know. I think that there's a high likelihood that because my parents were supportive of me, which I think was the most important thing, that really laid the groundwork for everything to build on top of it. But in New York City, even in our progressive beacon of a city, there is still a tremendous amount of parental rejection of young LGBT people. There are tonight in the runaway homeless youth shelters in New York City, 500 young people under the age of 21 who are homeless, who are either runaway or homeless young people, and 40% of whom are LGBT, which is a hugely disproportionate amount to consider the population. And a big reason is because there is still parental rejection, there is still bullying, there isn't the acceptance that needs to be universal. So we still have a long way to go, but we have made tremendous progress. Marriage equality is a real thing. We have gay-straight alliances in high schools all across the city. And we have done, I mean, I'm Speaker of the City Council. I'm 30, I just turned 36 years old.
If somebody would have said to you back then, in 2000 when you were doing this, you know, here's what your life is going to be. You're going to come out and you're going to make this revelation, and it'll be shocking to a lot of people. But you know what? 18 years later, you're going to be the Speaker of the City Council in New York City. What would you have thought?
I'm sort of speechless, because I think I would have been speechless if someone said that to me. You know, I came here, as you mentioned, at 19 years old, knowing two people, having two bags, not coming from a wealthy family, but an incredibly loving and supportive family. And I really struggled to make it here.
Why did you come here? Why did you choose to leave small town in Massachusetts that had been embracing to you in one of the more difficult moments of any young man's life, and you come to a place where you knew nobody?
You know, it's really funny, because now that I've been here for 18 years, about 18 years, what you hear from people who are not native New Yorkers all the time is that they read about New York City, they saw New York City on TV, they saw a movie in New York City, they visited New York City with their class or with their family or on a vacation, and there was something about the city that spoke to them. And for me, I visited here to get an award from an organization because of all the public speaking I had done across the country, the Hedrick Martin Institute, the home of the Harvey Milk High School in Astor Place. And I was supposed to spend a week here. And at the end of 2 weeks, I said, I want to move there. And I ended up moving to the city 6 months later. And it was sort of an immediate love affair. I joke all the time, I'm single. People say, how are you single? And I say, I'm in an LTR. I'm in a long-term relationship with the city of New York. And she is moody, and she can be difficult, but she is beautiful and amazing. And I think there are many New Yorkers who are not born here, who come here because there's something about the energy of the city. There's something about the city that draws you in. And when you connect to it, it's hard to leave.
It was the place for you.
That's right.
At that time in your life, certainly, and certainly now. Let's talk about how now you have gotten from that time when you show up here. And as you said, two people. Did you have a vision for yourself back then that would get you into politics and eventually, hopefully, get you to the level that you're at now?
There was a part of me after I came out in high school and got involved in activism and started to learn about the history of civil rights movements across the country, and seeing leadership among certain elected officials and not so much leadership among other elected officials, that I thought I want to be politically engaged and involved. But I didn't know that that was going to take the form at that time of elected office. And when I moved here and started working on other people's campaigns, I got involved in my local community board in Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen. I started to learn about the issues that matter in the city. I wanted to make a difference on LGBT equality. That is what connected me politically. And eventually, I decided that I thought that I could, I don't want to sound hokey or corny or saccharine, but I thought I want to make the world a better place. And there are many ways to make the world a better place. But I thought one of the ways that I want to do that is running for office and trying to have a real impact on public policy in the city that I love. And that's what I eventually did.
Let's talk about now your position as the Speaker. And the first question might be a simple one, but sometimes they're the most profound. There may well be people, native New Yorkers, who are watching this conversation and saying, I'm not sure what the Speaker does. You know, in our introduction, we said, and this is acknowledged fairly regularly, second most powerful person in the city of New York. But what does the Speaker do?
You know, the Speaker does more than I realized before I became Speaker.
If you had known that, I might have thought twice about this.
People always say to me, Jack, they say, like, how is it to be Speaker? And I always say this. I say, I am overwhelmed, exhausted, and stressed, while at the exact same time, grateful, loving it, enjoying every moment, and doing it with joy. The speaker, I think, does.
I think I might have said to you when we first saw it and you had gotten that post, I said, congratulations and commiserations.
Yes, and condolences.
Right? Yeah, at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
The speaker does a lot. I mean, if you consider the mayor, the chief executive of the city, to be like the president, the speaker is sort of like the head of Congress, the head of the municipal legislature here. Our city council is made up of 51 members, and the city council has 4 real primary functions, which the speaker helps lead the body and helps the members of the body. But those 4 functions are: this upcoming June, we're going to vote on what's going to be an $89 billion budget with a B. The council every year negotiates with whoever the mayor is in his administration on what that budget should look like and what should be included in it. So the budget is one big thing. Land use decisions. We see controversy all over the city on rezonings, on people wanting to build more housing, on luxury development going up, on overdevelopment going up, on infrastructure projects that are important to neighborhoods in the city. Whenever there's a rezoning, the city council has the final say. The council passes laws, bills that become law. So whether we just passed a package of bills this past week on fire safety after fires broke out over the winter in the Bronx that were very deadly. So we pass laws that hopefully make New York City better. And then lastly, the mayor appoints all the commissioners, the commissioner of the Department of Transportation and the chancellor of the Department of Education. The council has oversight over those agencies. We have subpoena power. We ask questions. We ensure that agencies are running properly. So those are our 4 things: budget, legislation, land use, and oversight. That's what the city council does. And the speaker is really should be the captain of that ship, trying to ensure that we're a strong, independent branch of government.
And that's an important thing, I think, when you talk about an independent branch of government. And I'm not so sure that everybody understands that. But with that in mind, how would you describe, in the months now, 4 months or so that you've been in the position, your political relationship with the mayor?
I think it's a working relationship, and it's a good relationship. The mayor and I meet on almost a weekly basis. I'm really proud that over the last few months, we've done some big things together. We were able to expedite, hopefully, the timeline in the closure of Rikers Island and doing borough-based facilities. And we did a big announcement with members of the council who are supportive of that. Again, this past week, we did an announcement on a package of bills combating sexual harassment in city government and in the private sector. And we did a big announcement a few weeks ago on announcing a new initiative on $125 million more dollars for what's called Fair Student Funding, which would help 854 schools in New York City. So there's that. Right. We work together.
Right.
But at the exact same time, he's an independent guy. I'm an independent guy. The council has priorities. He has priorities. And so we don't agree on everything. But what I always told the mayor is, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to look out for the members and for the body and for the people that we represent. I'm not going to surprise you. I'm not going to ever make it personal. This is about getting things done and getting results for New Yorkers and doing things on the merits. And that's what I've tried to do in the last 4+ months as Speaker.
Have you been able to say, and this is one of the things that I think is missing in present-day politics, not just nationally, but even locally. It seems that in the past, I'll say maybe 20 years, that so much of politics has become adversarial, even confrontational.
Yes.
Even within parties themselves.
Yes. We see that here in New York.
Yeah, we have seen that. Is that inevitable, do you think? Or are we just not approaching things? Or is that maybe productive? If the idea is that sometimes you have people butting heads and they truly believe in the value of their positions, that maybe that's the way you get things resolved. What do you think?
Well, I think there's always going to be, and there probably should be, it's probably healthy for there to be a natural tension between separate independent branches of government. And those branches are supposed to be, again, independent and co-equal in some ways. Though in New York City, we have a strong executive charter, so the mayor's stronger than the council, but we still have an independent role. If you look back from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there would be Democratic presidents with Republican Congresses who would work together, and Republican presidents with Democratic Congresses. Tip O'Neill, I guess, worked with Ronald Reagan to get things done.
Famously, they would say, look, we don't agree on much at all politically, but we like each other, we respect each other, and we realize we have to work to get things done.
I think that's the key thing. I think it's about having a relationship of honesty, of candor, and of collaboration and trying to get things done. You know, part of politics, and it's not the most fun part, and of government, is that sometimes you have to compromise when you don't want to. And that's life as well. You have to do that with your family.
Well, compromise, it's interesting you mentioned that, because you understand this. Compromise is the foundation of a democracy.
That's right.
There was a time when Henry Clay in our history was called the Great Compromiser. And that was the greatest compliment he could be given. And it seems now in politics that the notion of compromise is a bad word. It's a dirty word. You'll be vilified if you're accused of being a compromiser. And yet, as you said, isn't that how you get things done?
I mean, one of my political heroes was the late, great liberal lion of the Senate, Edward Moore Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, from the state that I was born in, Massachusetts. Similarly, you know, both of his brothers were assassinated. I've been watching a series on Netflix recently on RFK and his campaign for president and what happened to the country after his assassination. And what Ted Kennedy was able to do during his career in the Senate, even though he was probably the highest ID'd liberal in Congress, he was someone who was known for working with the other side of the aisle and getting things done. I think we need a little bit more of that. Though I am a tried and true progressive. My politics are left of center. The mayor's politics are left of center. But I'll tell you that in the city council, even some of the Republican members are very close friends of mine, are people that I have a personal relationship with. I know their families. We don't agree on everything, but we try to work together. And I think we need more of that in government, because ultimately what people care about is not rancor and division and scoring points. They care about results that are going to be meaningful and that they're going to feel in their own lives. That's across the country, and that's also here in New York City.
And that'd be a wonderful message if we could spread it. The idea that somebody can be on the other side of the aisle for you, it doesn't mean that you have to destroy them personally. It doesn't mean that you have to vilify them personally. You can agree to disagree sometimes, but try to get things done. Let me come back to something that you mentioned, because I think we talked about how our lives inform our positions. You've talked about your experiences informing your politics. And you mentioned the notion of candor and honesty. And as I indicated in the introduction, you've been very candid about your own pitfalls, your own trials and tribulations, and having to struggle and then achieve sobriety.
Yep.
HIV positive.
Yep.
Why do you feel that it was necessary, if that's the right word, to make that public, to make people know that part of who you are?
I think there are a few reasons. Number one, I'm not ashamed that I'm HIV positive. And so if I'm not ashamed of it, I don't think there's a reason to keep it a secret. And it's important to destigmatize so that we lessen the stigma around people who are HIV positive. We saw how bad that was when the epidemic started in the 80s and until drugs were created in the 1990s, how bad stigma was and the real negative effects it had on our society. On my sobriety, I look at my sobriety really as a gift. I look at my sobriety as I look at it as the biggest, most important thing that I have ever done for myself, and I didn't do it alone. I went to 12-step meetings. I had many people who I got sober with. I had many people who helped me stay sober. I got sober at the age of 27. I drank and used drugs for 6 years from the age of 21 to 27. On July 13th, 2009, I decided I was going to get sober after a bad run of using and drinking. And I'm almost at 9 years sober, and I haven't picked up a drink or a drug since. And I also think it's important to say that we are only, each one of us, as sick as our secrets.
That's a good way to put it.
And I don't need to keep secrets. I can talk about my father's alcoholism and gambling addiction, not in a negative way about him, but to talk about his own struggles. And he was still a good person. We are all complicated people. I can talk about the fact that I seroconverted and became HIV positive at the age of 22 and how difficult and devastating that was for me, but how I learned to grow to accept myself and live with that and take care of myself. And I can talk about my own sobriety and breaking free from the addiction that held on to me for so long, to hopefully inspire other people, to let other people know that you can get sober, you can get help, anyone can do it, no one is hopeless, and you don't have to do it alone. It's really important for every single one of us, not just those in elected office, to continue to share our experience, strength, and hope, to help other people who are afflicted and suffering. It's the biggest gift that we can give to the world and to other people.
Well, you know what, I will tell you this, Corey, I don't live in New York City, but if I did, I would be delighted to hear a speaker talking about the notion of we can come together, we can agree to disagree, but there's still things we need to do. And knowing your background and being another football guy, I'd be delighted to vote for you. Oh. But look, thank you for spending some time with us. I hope we can get together sometime soon and talk some more as the years go by and see what sort of progress we're making here. It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Jack, I always love talking to you. You are fantastic, and I'm so grateful for Metro Focus.
Our pleasure. Corey, you be well.
Thank you.
Take care.
Funding for this program was provided by